Hi, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to the WTS Northeast Regional Conference, Navigating the Northeast, Women at the Helm of Transportation Innovation. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Lori Chicoine, owner of Affinity Business Development, a marketing and BD firm focused on the AEC community, and one that is focused and passionate about the transportation industry. We are excited to have exceeded our registration goal of well over 300 people as we dive into week 2 of this 4-part educational series spanning each Friday in February. Today's theme is People First, ERGs, Safety, and Innovation. Whoops, I'm sorry, if somebody could forward the slide. Thank you. We're thrilled to share that this conference is being hosted in collaboration with ITE Northeastern District. This is a huge benefit to both our member and non-member attendees, as everyone is eligible to get, if you are eligible, you can get free PDH credits. So thank you so much to ITE for your support. Whether you're a longtime member, newly involved, or joining us for the first time, we're so glad you're here. WTS is built on connection, leadership, and lifting one another up. And this conference is a reflection of that community. Let me start with a quick overview of the WTS Northeast region and the value of our region councils. Working together as a region amplifies what our individual chapters can accomplish. It connects us across states and modes, giving us a broader platform to share ideas, support one another, and collaborate on issues that extend far beyond any single chapter. It also strengthens our connection to WTS International, ensuring that our local voices are heard while staying aligned with the overall organization's mission. And of course, regional collaboration creates opportunities like this conference to grow professionally, learn from one another, and elevate the visibility of our chapters, our members, and respective organizations. In 2015, WTS established 6 region councils nationwide, with the Northeast region quickly becoming one of the most active. Over the past 5 years, we've experienced tremendous growth, now totaling 3,163 members, representing 32% of WTS's overall mission of over 10,000 members. It's absolutely amazing. As you can see on this map, our footprint continues to expand. We now have 18 chapters across the Northeast, including 3 in Canada that we're really proud of. Today's event is a testament to that growth and strength. Thank you to our Northeast Region Council members and our council chair, Chrislyn Deerdorf, as well as the conference committee for making this conference possible. A special thank you to Erica Antoine for coordinating today's session and Abigail Meyer for overseeing registration. A few conference housekeeping items. Please enter your questions or comments in the Q&A. We will not be monitoring the chat, but feel free to use it if you want to say hello. We will get to as many questions as we possibly can based on time permitting, as we do have a tight schedule ahead. Speaker bios are also included in the meeting invitation. Again, we want to allow as much time as possible for session content, so introductions are kept to a minimum. Good news, I already mentioned, PDH credits are available. The URL is coming soon, so please stay tuned for that. And the AICP credits is up and running if you're eligible and interested for them. The screen, the link is on the screen, so please take note of that. And these sessions are recorded and will be available soon. Stay tuned as we determine what mode we're going to share that in. Next slide. This is the overall conference schedule. Last week, we were thrilled to kick off with Motion Makers, Women and Youth Shaping the Northeast. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive, so thank you for all our panelists. Today, again, is People First, ERGs, Safety and Innovation. Please join us next week with Resilient Connections, Bridges, Climate, and Shared Streets. And our NCAP theme is Women at the Helm, Trailblazers and Owners Steering Transportation on February 27th. Next slide. And with that, I'm excited to kick off our first session of 3 today, Empowered Voices, Employee Resource Groups as Engines for Organizational Change. Kate Ward, Senior Director of Trans Hudson and Intermodal Planning at the New Jersey Transit, will take it from here. Thank you, Kate.
Thanks, Lori. Erica, am I able to advance the slides now? Yes. Okay, great. I'm not the most tech savvy, even though I'm a millennial, so participants forgive me if I struggle at the very beginning to move these slides along. Okay. Okay. So run a show for our session. We're gonna just do some very high-level introductions, an overview of New Jersey Transit Employee Resource Groups, and then we're gonna go through some 3 key initiatives that have been supported by Empower. We'll then have a short Q&A, and then we want to allow for audience questions and discussions with our panelists. Sorry, I am clicking through, but I don't want to advance too fast. Okay. Sorry. So I'm Kate Ward, Senior Director at New Jersey Transit. I'll be our moderator. I do want to just add one note. Unfortunately, Susan Ledbetter, who's with WSP, had a medical emergency, so she's not actually able to be here. She sent me her speaker notes, so I will be able to run through her content, but unfortunately, we won't be able to do her part of the Q&A. And if you have specific questions for the really interesting work that Susan's doing in the United Kingdom, please drop them in the chat and we'll see if we can get a response from her to your questions. But I'm joined by Louis Tejada from our Human Resources Department, Alyssa McKenna-Gordon from our Creative Services team, and Susan O'Donnell, who's a member of the Planning Department like I am. So really excited. You have all their bios. We won't do crazy long introductions, and I'm excited to turn it over to Louis. Yay.
Thanks, Kate. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you all at today's conference. As Kate mentioned, my name is Louis Tejada, and I am New Jersey Transit's Director of Employee Engagement. For those who may be less familiar, company employee resource groups, or SERGs, are voluntary employee-led groups that foster a welcoming and collaborative workplace. These groups create space for connection and ideas that bring initiatives to life that positively impact our employees, customers, and communities via 4 main priorities. 1, foster community. 2, encourage growth and collaboration. 3, boost engagement and retention. And 4, act as a strategic sounding board for the overall agency. At New Jersey Transit, we currently have 5 SERGs as seen on the screen. We have Bridges, which is our Black or African American surge. Empower, which is our women's surge. Military to Mobility, or M2M for short. This is our military veteran surge. Next Gen, which is our emerging generation surge. And our NJ Transit Abilities Group, or NJ TAG for short, which is our People with Disabilities surge. Each surge has their own mission. However, the overall surge program's mission is to empower employees to help shape our organizational culture by promoting awareness, understanding, and action that strengthens relationships with our employees, customers, and communities. Surges serve as platforms for networking, professional development, overall engagement, and strategic business alignments. While each of the surges are employee-led and driven, there is a behind-the-scenes program director who helps guide each of the surges to ensure that goals and initiatives are directly aligned with our agency's broader strategic objectives. This is where my team and I come into play. Our employee engagement team serves as a consultant, advisor, and thought partner, providing clarity while also giving independence to each of the surges. One key thing to note is that while each of the surges have their own unique identities, they are open to all employees. And now I'd like to hand it off to Alyssa McKenna-Gordon.
Thanks, Lois. My name is Elisa. I am the Senior Director of Internal Communications at New Jersey Transit, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about how we worked with our surge in power to get us through a very recent move of our New Jersey Transit headquarters. So, in the early spring of 2023, the then president of New Jersey Transit announced that we'd be moving our headquarters for the very first time since the 1990s. So there was about 2,200 employees that were going to be moving. And although we were only moving about 3 blocks away, the move brought a lot of trepidation and a lot of resistance. Like any change, it brought a lot of fear for employees. Many of our employees had never worked anywhere else besides transit, and specifically, they never worked anywhere but the building that they were sitting in. Many of them had never worked in any other place except the very desk, very cubicle that they were working in. And so there was a lot of questions. There were a lot of fears. There was a lot of hesitation from employees. We have a lot of unique operational needs as a transit agency that created unique challenges for us for the move. So first, we were going from a building that we owned to a building that we rented. So there were rules all of a sudden and guidelines that we had to abide by that didn't exist before. We were also going from a environment where people had very large cubicles with very high walls to all of a sudden going to offices that was an open workspace. People had no cubicle walls. People were going from very large offices to standardized offices where no matter how long you'd been with the company or what your seniority level was, you were sitting in an office that was the same size as everybody else, and you had glass walls. And so this was a very big change for people. And so we knew from the jump that we were going to have our work cut out for us. We also had some logistical challenges. We were a very, very paper heavy company. We were going from lots of paper, about 35 years worth of paper that had to be digitized, and lots of things that had to be purged, items that people were not going to be able to bring over to the new offices. So there was a lot of change management that was going to go into this move. And immediately there was a lot of negativity surrounding the move. Next slide. But we didn't want the move to be negative, right? It was supposed to be an exciting, very positive experience for employees, but it very quickly was getting negative. There was a lot of rumors swirling around, they're spending all this money on new offices. What does this mean for us? It means they're going to start laying people off. It means they're going to expect us to come back to work 5 days a week, and we're going to lose our hybrid works policy. And, with fear comes rumors, right? And comes speculation. And so we wanted to right away squelch those rumors and really control the narrative. And so as Senior Director of Communications for Internal Communications, I was tasked with leading our communications efforts. And I worked very closely with the head of our organizational services who handled logistics for the move, and the consultant that was brought on who was spearheading the move. In general, she was sort of the driving force behind move, working with all the contractors and the building management and the architects. And then we had 2 change management consultants that were brought on to help guide us. We all worked very closely to develop strategies to carry us through, the next 18 months. There was going to be 18 months between the time that we announced the move and the time that the first wave of employees were going to be moving over to the building. And then between the first wave of employees moving over and the last wave, there was going to be about 6 to 8 months. So it was a very long process. And so we wanted to develop a steady stream of communications. We wanted to make sure there was a lot of transparency and give people as much information as possible so that we didn't have a lot of rumors swirling around. We didn't have a lot of misinformation. And we really wanted to get input from employees. We wanted to make sure that this was a place that they felt like was their home and they felt like they enjoyed being in. This was going to be a modern office space, and we wanted to make sure that it gave them amenities that the old offices didn't offer, that they had things in the new building that they really enjoyed and appreciated that they didn't get out of the old building. We felt like we were investing money and resources into this, and so we wanted to make sure that it was worth our while, and that employees were going to feel like, yeah, we really like being here, and this makes for a positive work environment that is attractive to new employees, that makes people want to be here, and makes for a more productive work environment. And so we developed newsletters. We had I don't have to take you through all these, you can see them listed, but there was a lot of things that we did to make sure that employees felt included and involved in the process. We did open house tours of the new office spaces so they could see it in advance, so they knew what they were walking into. We had a panel of change champions that helped spread information for us and help kind of be our cheerleaders. We had tons of FAQs that went out to let people know where they could eat, where they could park, what they could bring over, how they could help move the process along, what they should be doing along the way over the 18 months to prepare for the move, and how they can make it easier on themselves. There was a lot of steps that they could be taking, the digitizing process, what they should be doing to get rid of old information, and proper records management. So there was a lot that we could be doing, but we really needed help getting input from employees, and that's where we leaned on the surges. So Kate, next slide, please. So we worked with Empower very closely to develop an employee survey to get ideas from employees on what was important to them, what they wanted to see in their next office space, what kind of community spaces and office amenities were important to them. And so the end result is that we have these beautiful mother's rooms and wellness rooms where people can go. We have multi-faith prayer rooms. We have gender neutral restrooms. Believe it or not, the most popular amenity that came out of this was ice machines. On every single floor, we have water stations where people can fill their water bottles with cold water and ice. If you can believe it, of all the things that we put in our new offices, that is the thing that people love the most. We get so much feedback on it. People use them all day long, and they're on every single floor. There's multiple ice and water stations on every floor. And we came to realize that it's the little things that people appreciated. Like I said, the move was met with a lot of trepidation and a lot of resistance. But once we got into the new space, I think people really started to appreciate not only what amenities were offered, but the amount of effort that went into building out the space for them, the amount of consideration that we tried to put in to building a space that was that everybody would enjoy. Obviously, with 2,200 employees, you can't meet everybody's specific wants and needs, but I think we worked really well collectively from an operations standpoint, an org services standpoint, working with with our surges to really, like I said, build a place where people could feel at home, at ease, they could work productively, collaboratively, break down silos, but also be comfortable, where we'd have room for growth and expansion, but also offer people privacy, offer people a place to retreat to, and get their work done, but also have a sense of self. And so we really want to, kind of call out Empower and thank them for their insight and their input and their collaboration. And these are just some photos of some of the beautiful spaces that we now offer employees. And that's it for me.
I'll just jump in. Hi, I'm Susan O'Donnell. I'm the Senior Director for Business Analysis and Research, but I'm really happy to be here at this conference. Happy Friday morning. I'm here to share a story of how this campaign started, because it truly began with one idea. In 2020, during COVID, my colleague Leah Sheridan, a member of Empower and a member of another employee resource group, attended a human trafficking webinar that was hosted by the New Jersey Attorney General's office. She attended for professional reasons because she works in community mobility. After the webinar, she thought, more people at New Jersey Transit need to hear about this. The key is, it wasn't just an idea. She took action. She came to Empower and the other CERT she belonged to and said, what if we co-host a webinar as a lunch and learn here at New Jersey Transit about human trafficking? And that simple question is where it all began. Next slide. On Human Trafficking Awareness Day in January 2023, we hosted that webinar. Several surges sponsored it and the Attorney General's office presented it. I remember being profoundly impacted by all the information. One point that really stayed with me was that transit systems often unknowingly are part of trafficking networks. Traffickers move and recruit victims in plain sight on the transit system. That realization was really sobering, but it was also motivating. It made many of us think, what more could we do? Next slide. Fast forward to January 2024. I was at the Transportation Research Board's annual meeting, and I attended a session on human trafficking in transportation that was spurred on from the first webinar that I attended. One of the presenters talked about posting resources for victims inside bathroom stalls. It was like, psh, I was like, wow, that's so simple, but brilliant. And bathrooms are one of the only places that victims might be alone, away from their trafficker. A small sign with a hotline or a text number or a QR code could be life-changing for that victim. And I thought, we have lots of bathrooms in the New Jersey Transit system all over the state. We could do this. That was the second light bulb moment. Next slide. I brought the idea back to Empower, and the response was immediate and enthusiastic. We connected with the marketing team, and they elevated it beyond anything we could have imagined. Instead of just bathroom signage, they tied it to an existing customer campaign called Ride Kind. The message became, human trafficking isn't always easy to spot. In 2024, we partnered with the we signed the USDOT Leaders Against Human Trafficking Pledge. We partnered with marketing, government community relations, New Jersey Transit Police. We worked with employee engagement, talent development, and this truly became cross-departmental. That collaboration made it powerful. Next slide. In January 2025, we formally launched the system-wide campaign. We held a press conference and unveiled bus wraps. We had one in our northern division of the state and one in our southern division. Seeing that campaign message moving through communities on buses throughout the whole state was really meaningful. In the slide, in the picture on the left, you see our former CEO, our police chief, and Leah Sheridan is there on the left side as part of that campaign, that press conference. Next slide. The campaign also lives on our website. It's at njtransit.com/endtrafficking. There we provide, and this is actually the newer version of it. I didn't have a picture of the older version on the slide. There we provide resources for victims and for customers who want to help safely. In 2025, we also partnered with a nonprofit called 911 Cell Phone Bank. Unclaimed phones from our lost and found are refurbished by 911 Cell Phone Bank, securely wiped, and donated to trafficking survivors in New Jersey via nonprofits that support them. For someone escaping trafficking, a safe phone can mean access to help, transportation, housing, family. That felt like a tangible way to contribute to recovery, not just awareness. Next slide. Another major milestone was training. Working with Truckers Against Trafficking, TAT, our talent development team built a customized training module specific to New Jersey Transit. I was happy to see I wasn't happy about this, but in May 2025, we had a strike of our rail engineers, and our train system was shut down. But what I was happy about was, as part of the shutdown, agency employees were deployed across the system to assist customers. And the happy part comes that as part of that assistance, we were all asked to do a training to prepare on how to help with customers and how to engage with them. And I was happy to see that that human trafficking module was a part of that training. So it was a great way to get that training in front of the broader audience of the agency. And at this point, we have about 1,500 employees who've completed the module, along with our entire police force. So now our workforce understands and knows how to respond appropriately. That's culture change. Next slide. In December 2025, we were thrilled to learn that the US DOT awarded New Jersey Transit a $50,000 grant recognizing our human trafficking awareness efforts. That recognition validated the collaborative work across departments and the surges. But more importantly, it allowed us to expand the campaign even further. Next slide. In 2026, we launched the next phase, which we're calling Safe Passage. With large events like the FIFA World Cup coming to our state, this is timely as large events bring increased human trafficking activity. In the campaign, we incorporated new bus wraps, an updated website, QR codes and digital signage. You see a picture of our lock screen with a QR code to additional information for employees, employee newsletter articles. And another like, to me, just fantastic, brilliant idea was to partner with U.S. men's national soccer team player Sergino Dest, along with student athlete ambassadors to reach younger audiences, because statistically, younger people are more at risk. That's really smart prevention. Next slide. Oh, not next slide. Closing. Sorry. Closing. I got carried away with my next slides there. What I hope you'll take away from this story is this. It started with one employee and one webinar, taking action and sharing an idea at a surge meeting, collaborating across departments. You don't have to launch a statewide campaign on day one. Start small, build allies, leverage your communication teams, engage leadership, partner with law enforcement and nonprofits. As transportation professionals and as WTS members, we move people every day. We also have the power to help protect them. And sometimes real impact starts with a single light bulb moment. And that's my story for today.
Thanks, Susan. So Susan was actually involved in another Empower event that we did last summer, where, and again, I'm filling in for Susan Ledbetter. We had two Susans. But as something that we try to do with employee resource groups is find ways to do lunch and learns and to bring in not just internal experts, but also outside experts. And I actually was lucky enough to work with Susan Ledbetter when I was in the UK. And I was aware of a lot of really amazing work that she was doing around people-centered design and really thinking about different needs for different riders and how we as transit professionals, wherever you work, can put yourself in someone else's shoes and try to break down silos that can happen in the workplace so that when you're approaching a project, you're really thinking about all the different needs. And so as a part of that, we did a lunch and learn where we invited Susan Ledbetter to come talk about the work that she's been involved in the UK, so we could learn about how they approach people-centered design. And so specifically, she does a lot of work on gender inclusive design, really looking at mobility patterns, how women travel differently than men, key barriers, safety issues, the way that we engage with people in communities, really meeting people where they are. And she helped walk through some really interesting best practice examples to spark ideas for New Jersey Transit employees. So first off, she sort of really hit home that from their research, it shows that how people travel is influenced by why they're traveling, how they're traveling, the routes they choose, the time of day that they travel, and how far that they're willing to go. And these factors are shaped not just by like the infrastructure we build, but by responsibility, personal experience, and perceived risk. And so research consistently shows that women do tend to have more complex journeys. There's shorter average commuting distances, but more multi-stop journeys and making trip changes. There's more non-work related trips. and a greater likelihood of actually traveling in the off-peak, and more likely to be traveling with others, if that's children, older relatives, or dependents. And they often are more likely to take longer routes to feel safer. So as a result, the decisions they're making about when to travel, how to travel, and how long journeys take are often shaped by safety and confidence as by convenience. Oh, sorry, too fast. And so when we talk about women traveling, we're not just talking about a niche user group. You know, women are half the population and whose needs are still really not reflected necessarily in all aspects about transport systems and how they're designed. Safety is consistently the biggest barrier for women and girls. Harassment, whether experienced directly or simply anticipated, shapes how, when, and if women travel. Even when crime rates are low, perceived safety can still drive behavior, avoiding night travel, choosing more expensive options, or not making trips at all. Reliability also matters hugely. Inflexible timetables, long waits, or mixed connections don't just cause inconveniences, they add stress and risk. When time is tight, uncertainty becomes a barrier in transit. Cost is another key issue. Women on average have lower incomes and are more sensitive to fare increases. And we also end up paying more simply to feel safe, whether that's ride hailing, parking closer, or traveling at certain times. Transport systems are often not designed with women in mind, whether that's pregnancy, I experienced that, traveling with the stroller, I'm also experiencing that right now, carrying bags or reduced mobility. Lack of step-free access, seating, or toilets quietly but powerfully limit transit and travel. Clear information builds confidence. Poor wayfinding, unreliable time updates, and the absence of visible staff can increase anxiety, especially when something goes wrong. Uncertainty amplifies safety concerns. For girls, these barriers start early. They're more likely to face restrictions on independent travel and higher levels of harassment in public space during adolescence. This has a long-term impact on confidence, independence, and opportunity. The key point is this: when transport works for women and girls, it's safer, more reliable, and more usable for everybody. Inclusion isn't an add-on, it's a good system design. So, as global demand for sustainable transport grows, interventions aimed at improving transport safety and perceptions of safety are increasingly important to achieve both modal shift and better outcomes for women and everybody. These interventions also benefit communities more broadly, improving conditions for everyone and serving as a powerful catalyst for widespread social, economic, and environmental benefits. Investments in gender-responsive transport can directly improve access to opportunities and overall well-being for women and everybody. Indirectly, investments can also improve economic, social, health, and environmental outcomes by contributing to stronger labor market participation, supporting engagement in social and community life, and then promoting active and public transport travel, which reduces carbon emissions. So obviously when you're doing your design and you're really trying to think about how to be more people-centered and for everybody, there's common pitfalls. That one-size-fits-all approach, sort of assuming a neutral equals inclusive, but we haven't acknowledged different lived experiences, how an elderly person travels is different than a youth. I think we're over-reliant on crime statistics. We don't just focus on reported crime instead of perceived safety. It's really struggled to get a diverse engagement. And sometimes we really only hear from those dominant voices. Some people who always come to our board meetings over and over, we can hear them, but we don't always engage with those communities that don't get to speak up. We design routes based on efficiency, not experience. We just assume people take the most direct route without considering that women often take longer diverted paths to feel safer. Toilet and facilities are overlooked, definitely insufficient or poorly remain public toilets, baby changing areas. I've experienced that, searching for a place to change your kid when there's been a huge diaper blowout. And poor placement and maintenance. Lights installed under tree canopies are left broken, and large areas of vegetation overgrowth can undermine safety. Lack of long-term maintenance budgets often make inclusive design unsustainable. So what do we do? How do we do it differently? And this was really the call that Susan Ledbetter had to Empower and to all of the New Jersey Transit employees that when we're thinking about our work, how do we do it differently? And how do we put ourselves in someone else's shoes? It's not just about for women, but for people-centered design, it's recognizing that, you know, if you're an elderly or a student, you're traveling differently. And so we want to make sure that we're measuring improvements in different ways. We're doing research with the right groups, walking and really seeing the lived experience of people, how they're using our systems or how they're not using our systems. Susan spoke about that she did a walk with a woman who was in a wheelchair, and it was so illuminating to hear about her perceived path. Was actually, she wanted to be in a more crowded area because having people around in case something went wrong, she didn't want to be alone. She didn't want to be isolated in case she got stuck. And so it's not always, again, that most direct route. People might want to take a journey that makes them feel safer and is meeting more of their needs. So it was a really great session, and we were really inspired by Susan's work. And we did some wonderful interactive where we asked each other to put yourself in different shoes and really think about how we could do it. And it led to some amazing collaboration between our safety team and our police department to really interface with our stations design group to say, oh, let's take information that we get from our customers and to feed it into our standards of design for lighting at stations, or where we are deploying tactile pavement. And it really got people to think differently and to realize that kind of no matter what your role in the agency is, you use transit and you can put yourself in other people's shoes and make sure that the work we're doing really is people-centered and is meeting all of our customer needs. So it was a great lunch and learn. And I'm sorry that UK Susan could not be here to talk through the amazing work that she's doing over in the UK. So now I get to pivot and actually talk with our awesome panelists. And so they've had a chance to show you an overview of some of the great work we did, but I want to dive a little bit deeper. So my first question is for Louis. Can you tell us more about some of the work employee resource groups have done to help support professional development and enhance employee engagement? What are you hoping to do in 2026?
Yes. So when I took over the Surge program, I inherited a strong foundation with a lot of passion and momentum, as you've witnessed this morning. My role in this has been to bring structure around the program, creating clarity, consistency, and shared expectations throughout each of the surges, not just a one surge operating just one way, et cetera. While also still empowering each surge with the independence to design and lead initiatives that matter most to their members. So as you may or may not have noticed, our role, the employee engagement team, our role is very, very behind the scenes. We want to give the independence to the surges to lead initiatives, as you've seen. So as part of that work, we're focused on enhancing how surges support professional development. That includes more aligned mentoring and learning opportunities, stronger partnerships with our leaders, and clearer ways for surges to connect their work to engagement and talent outcomes. And at the same time, surge leaders themselves are gaining meaningful leadership experience, building skills and influence and strategy and execution through the work that they lead. So somebody who may be a surge leader may not be a leader within New Jersey Transit or at any company or agency or even within their team, but that doesn't mean that they're not a leader themselves. One thing that we like to say within our overall talent management team, our employee engagement team falls within the talent management pillar of HR, is everyone's a leader. You don't have to be a people manager to be a leader. So we're really trying to change the narrative and that misconception, which we perceive to be a misconception. So looking ahead for the rest of 2026 and beyond, we're focused on continuing to mature the program. That means scaling what's working, deepening executive sponsorship, and putting better metrics around impact, while still preserving the authenticity and employee-led nature that makes surges so powerful. Ultimately, our goal is for surges to feel both supported and trusted, and to be recognized as a key driver of engagement and development across our agency.
Awesome. Thanks, Louis. That's really inspiring. I'm now going to pivot to our second speaker, Elisa. That was a huge undertaking, moving everyone. I remember exactly all of that, the fear, the worries, the confusion, but was so excited to see the new facilities. For other organizations undertaking changes, maybe like office moves or big reorgs, what are things that they can do to bring employees into that process? Are there any other lessons learned from our office move that you'd like to impart to other groups?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think transparency is critical. I think the more information you can share, the better. And I think that the voice of the senior leadership is critical. Having a senior leader really kind of steer the ship and be the real voice behind the move, and letting people know kind of, this is what we're doing, these are the expectations, these are the goals, these are the deadlines. I think that's critical to getting people on board. I think the buy-in from senior leadership is critical, because it trickles down. And so I think that would be the number one thing that I would share with people is, if you don't have the buy-in from all the senior leadership, your battle is going to be an uphill battle. And so it really kind of rolls down the hill. And so the more buy-in you can get from senior leadership and the more vocal they can be, the easier time you'll have. And I do think that, again, leaning on your, employees is to bring people in, like the change champions and the ERGs, is really important. Again, you're never going to satisfy everybody. That's impossible. But if you can try and satisfy the masses in reasonable ways, right? To find ways to address the issues that are most important to people and make people feel like their voices are heard, I think you're ahead of the game. People ultimately just want to know that you're listening and that they're being heard, that they have an opportunity to voice their concerns, to ask questions. And I think as much as you can listen to those feelings and take them into consideration, people appreciate that. I know, it's unrealistic that you can address every single concern or issue, but I think ultimately people just want to know that there's somebody listening. And so the town halls, I think, really helped people just having an opportunity to voice their feelings or ask questions. So yeah, I think giving people a voice is really critical.
That's great. Thanks, Lisa.
Yep.
Turning it over to Susan. Your anti-human trafficking campaign is a really great example of a cross-departmental initiative. Can you tell us a little bit more about the ways that you broke down silos, and what you learned in the process of this really amazing campaign?
Okay, well, first, I'm not going to say it's my campaign because there was a lot. It was a village, so not my campaign. I just was a spark that helped move it along. So I think amplifying what you were talking about with the Lunch and Learn and the work that Susan Ledbetter did, we did a similar study here at New Jersey Transit, looking how people travel on our system. And one of the things that we did as part of that, so first we collected loads of data. We did surveys, we did focus groups, a whole slew of them, and we had a lot of information. And as part of the process, we convened a group of stakeholders across the entire agency. We had about 40 members of stakeholders from all different departments: safety, security, capital planning, employee talent development. I'm forgetting many, but all over. And we got them engaged early on, and we shared with them this information. And then we did a really interesting several hour in-person sort of workshop, or ideation workshop, I think is what we called it, where, we got feedback on what they heard, like how did they interpret what they heard, and how could we advance things, and what changes could we make based on things that we learned from this. So that was a really good way to get a lot of people across the agency sitting at a table who don't normally sit at a table. So I think, if it didn't come across in my part of the presentation, collaboration, like that is a key. And frankly, my job, I lead essentially the market research department. We collect lots of data. We do a customer satisfaction survey. We have an enormous amount of data. So I work really hard to synthesize that data, make it user-friendly and get it in the hands of various people across the agency to make change based on the feedback that we're getting from customers. So, I think it starts with that. And then the other thing I want to amplify is one of my favorite words, and I've said this many times, is perspective. I use it in my job when designing surveys because I design a survey and think about, well, who's going to answer this and what are they going to be thinking and what are the response options that they might have. So I'm always trying to look at it, every single question from a different perspective. And that lunch and learn and the work that we did helped get people to sit down and think of things outside of your box, outside of your own personal experience, and think about it in other ways. And I remember in the lunch and learn, talking about generations and millennials, and I forget what the youngest generation is, but there was an intern, and he shared a story of how he traveled on transit with his grandmother. And how eye-opening it was, what a different experience it was than when he's traveling with his friends. And that is the point, that it's not all about just the way you travel. There's many different ways that people travel. So I'll step off the soapbox.
No, that's great. That's like taking all the words. It was, I remember that intern. It was great. Yeah, it was a wonderful lunch and learn. And so I think we have about 10 minutes left. And so I just wanted to say that you've heard about the different ways that New Jersey Transit is using employee resource groups to shape both internal and external initiatives to work to improve staff collaboration, and also just to deliver the best service for our customers. I did want to say, if I'm not exactly sure how it would work, maybe you could type it in the chat, but if there are any specific questions for the panel, we did want to leave that. We do have like one, interactive exercise, kind of similar to the lunch and learn that we did, if nobody really feels like raising their hand and asking a question. But I'm not sure technologically how it would work, but we did want to leave the space that if people have questions for our awesome panelists, they can ask them.
I do see one Q&A, and I do see one question in the Q&A chat.
Yes. Shonda, and apologies if I'm not, Shonda, yes, says, I'd love to get the contact information for the person who created these slides regarding the transit being gendered. I'd like to invite her to speak in my organization. Yeah, sure. I'm sure Susan, UK Susan, would be happy. So I don't actually know how I would do that. I can work with Erica and the other conference organizers to figure out how to get you her contact information. Well, if there are no other questions, we wanted to sort of try to see if we could do another type of interactive exercise like we did at the awesome Lunch and Learn with Susan US and Susan UK. And so this is like really just like dropping ideas in the chat and people can sort of chat with each other. But we like to say, like, imagine this. You have a project team that's making upgrades to a commuter rail station with bus stops around it. What are the different solutions the project team can think of to accommodate our different people? You've got a hospital nearby, you've got a university. What can the project team draw upon their own experience to shape solutions? Thinking about a young student leaving a party late at night, or a parent traveling with children, or a senior citizen looking to ride during rush hour to get to an important medical appointment. Pick a different person and put yourself in their shoes and think about all the different factors that you'd need to consider as you're designing this commuter rail space that has a bus connection. So if you just want to like start throwing ideas in the chat, we can pick them off. I know one thing that I have really experienced is I have a parent who is going blind. And so I always try to put myself in his shoes about what it's like to slowly lose your vision and how that can really change your experience of sort of, he's losing, can't see people on the side. It's much harder to read signs, to know that you're going the right way. And I think for me, that importance of having transit staff who are out of the booth, who are there to see people who may be a little bit more trepidatious as they walk through the train station. I think it's not about, I mean, it's obviously tactile pavement, different lighting and different signage is incredibly important. But I think that human connection of being able to see when somebody is maybe a little bit more nervous as they're walking through the system for whatever reason. So that's something I'm always aware of now, is just that reduced vision.
Kate, I'll jump in because I had forgotten, or I don't know if I was aware of that. We actually are piloting a pretty cool app called Good Maps. I believe the Port Authority is also piloting it at one of the airports. We're piloting it in Hoboken, and we're going to expand it to Secaucus. And essentially, it's an app meant for people with low vision, but frankly, could be for a tourist coming in from FIFA who's trying to navigate our very complicated Secaucus station. They do LiDAR detection. We got to see how they do it. They do LiDAR detection of the whole station, and you can use the app to position where you are. And then the app can guide you or sort of give you a line, and you can pick in like, I need the men's room, or I want the ticket office, or I'm looking for track 7. And you can put that in and it'll give you directions both on the screen, but also audibly.
Oh, wow.
So again, if you're hard of hearing or low vision, it kind of works interchangeably. And it's a pretty cool app. So if you're in our Hoboken station or soon to come, probably before FIFA starts, it should be in our Secaucus station and maybe more.
Oh, wow, that's great. Yeah, see, I think that's, for me, who sometimes fears technology, robots will take over the world. I love that, that there is like a really wonderful use of all these new technologies to take those barriers down, and get people using the system. That's wonderful. I'm excited to see that.
I'll show you next time we're in the office together.
Yeah, that's all. Yeah. Has someone who's been lucky enough to travel abroad and not be able to read signs at a station, having that app would have been amazing. So I'm excited that we can hopefully have that for our people coming to the World Cup this summer. I actually can't, for whatever reason, see the chat. So I'm so sorry if other people
This is Lori. So we're not monitoring the chat. We're only monitoring the Q&A. So if anyone has additional questions, I do have one, and maybe this is for Louis, but anybody that thinks they can answer that. But if an agency or one of our consulting organizations wanted to leverage their ERGs more intentionally, what would you recommend that they do, or their next steps would be? I know there's a lot of people that loosely have ERG programs, and oftentimes they can be hard to get more engagement, perhaps even from the leadership level. So I'm just curious to know anybody's thoughts on how to make these more impactful for members of an organization.
Yeah, this actually comes at a perfect time, at least internally, because we are designing this transformation process for our surges. So our surge program was created and started maybe about 5 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, but I recently took it over within the past year. And one thing I noticed just in informal conversations and informal meetings with our surges and surge members is that every single surge operates a little differently. And the engagement level as well. So that's what I was alluding to earlier, where just trying to bring this consistency across the board. But not only that, it's currently internally, membership is very word of mouthy, and even though it's a very effective marketing tool, right, the oldest marketing method there is, and still effective, what we're trying to do is formulate a way where we have maybe open houses, visualize a college fair, right? So we have a surge representing a table and just an open forum, and hey, if you're interested in coming to learn about each of our surges, what they do, their mission, etc., how they impact the agency, and if you're interested in joining, they can come and do that. So still a work in progress. We're still working through all that, but we have noticed that just engaging with them, and not to use that word because I use that a lot because we are employee engagement, but just engaging with surge members, with surges, marketing it internally. Elisa and I are, what I like to say is, we're attached to the hip, right? We're strong partners, internal partners, and just marketing it, getting the word out instead of it just being word of mouth. Yes, we would love for word of mouth to continue, but how do we leverage our internal communication strategies to boost engagement, boost membership, and also re-engage surge members who may have been very active in the past, who kind of fell off, but now there's this reinvigorated energy, and now they're coming back, which we're seeing. So just all those things. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you.
I'd also like to add that I think understanding your objectives is critical, right? So I think as a surge collective group, understanding what your goals and objectives are and what you're hoping to achieve is helpful to internal communications or marketing, or even employee engagement, so that we can help you reach said goals, right? And steer you in the right direction and help you develop the right programming and help you. So whatever it is, whether it's recruiting or, if it's a specific initiative, if it's, Women's History Month, or if there's a specific, if it's, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish, I think understanding really what your objectives are is critical so that we can deliver whatever it is you're trying to do, and we can strategically guide you and also connect you to the right people within the organization so that you can work cross-departmentally, right? Like Susan connected with the right people for anti-human trafficking. So I think that's a critical point too.
Great. Thank you, Alyssa.
Well, I think our time is up. We nailed it. Not too long, not too short. So yeah, I think we're really excited that so many people attended and loved the Q&A. Thanks so much for engaging with the topic. We just really hope that you have walked away from this panel to empower yourself, empower your coworkers, empower your staff, empower the users of your system to really engage and communicate and engage. So with that, we'll turn it over to the next session. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Kate. That was excellent. I know I learned so much, particularly regarding just the human trafficking, and I would love to have more conversation about that. And I hope you submitted an abstract to the WTS National Conference. But thank you. I've also been very involved in ERGs and learned more. And, it's a constant struggle to make sure, for one, that we provide these ERG opportunities for our people, but keep the level of engagement. And oftentimes we're having to do that in a volunteer capacity. So anyway, thank you all so much. I'm now going to introduce session 2. It's Beyond Hard Hats, How Psychological Safety Enhances Physical Safety in the Workplace. And I'm going to kick it off to Jessica Warren, Environmental Health and Safety Training Manager at Pannoni. So thank you so much, Jessica. It's all yours.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Let me make sure we can do the advancing here. Erica, did you turn that over to me? Oh, there we go. Indeed. Yay for technology. As Lori mentioned, my name is Jessica Warren. I'm the Environmental Health and Safety Manager at Pannoni. And I'm really pleased to be here today. And what I'd like to do is hopefully frame our session both as a safety topic and as a leadership topic. We'll be talking about the connection about how people feel at work and whether they go home safe. And while much of what I share today might not sound particularly revolutionary, I hope it will be impactful in your work and that you at least have one or two solid takeaways. Some of the things that we'll cover today include research, examples, tools, and an action plan. I'm hoping, again, that this will be practical and you'll have something that you can take with you as soon as today. I was going to say tomorrow, but maybe today or Monday. In consideration of psychological safety and framing this, trust and communication can drive safer outcomes. Empowering leaders in our spaces, especially women, can certainly drive culture change. And all of this will lead us to fewer incidents, faster problem solving, and better employee retention and job satisfaction. And what will we learn today? Hopefully, a deeper understanding of the concept of psychological safety and a recognition truly of the link from that to injuries in the workplace. Those that can be seen and those that are not readily visible, and how we can apply those strategies to grow that particular aspect of safety culture in our workplaces. We will touch on the background of psychological safety, identify some trust and communication factors, which I'm super committed to. We'll talk a little bit about some data. I'll throw some data out while we go through these slides, and then again, discuss some practical strategies and tactics. So what exactly is psychological safety? Psychological safety is a term that was coined, believe it or not, in the last century, in 1999 by Amy Edmondson. And it is a shared belief among team members that the team is a space for interpersonal risk-taking. This means that individuals within an environment feel comfortable taking risks and making mistakes. Defined simply, people feel safe to speak up without fear of blame or embarrassment. And so in context of today's discussion around safety, physical and psychological, some of those examples would be, for example, asking a question, admitting to a mistake, calling for a stop work, which is a big one for those of us who've ever had to do that, and reporting things like near miss accidents or hazards. Why does it matter in environmental health and safety? As most of us would attest to, most serious incidents have a clear warning signs. Psychological safety will certainly help bring those warnings to the surface sooner. In 2023, for example, National Safety Council conducted a nationwide survey offered in both English and Spanish that provided data specifically about the connection between traditional health and safety and safe work practices and the idea of psychological safety. Of respondents working in person at least one day a week, those who felt psychologically unsafe on the job were 80% more likely to be injured at work, requiring medical attention and or missing days of work. So clearly fostering this psychological safety truly contributes to a safer physical workplace by encouraging proactive reporting of potential hazards and safety issues. Workers who feel that their employer discourages reporting were 2.4 times more likely to have experienced a work injury. And we don't want that. Some other quick facts, tying this in directly with transportation. Some facts from National Safety Council and Federal Highway Association. Right? Work zones are dynamic and high risk, and early hazard reporting and empowered workers will prevent tragedies. Leaders can really make a difference. And by leaders, that could be a team leader, a frontline leader, a frontline supervisor. Leaders can really make a difference in how we show up in this space and how we model the idea of psychological safety in a truly holistic safety culture. It should be our job to make it normal and to set these norms around reporting hazards, speaking up, and as I mentioned, if necessary, calling for a stop work. Also taking this a little bit different direction than the last slide, which feels more sort of construction related, right? From an engineering standpoint, for many of you on the call, it's pretty obvious that design decisions will affect decades of safety for the greater public. Psychological safety in the office and in this process for junior staff enables them and the reviewers to raise concerns early during planning and design. How are we, as leaders and senior engineers, how are we modeling that dynamic for younger staffers? Don't we owe it to everyone, including ourselves and to them, to be mentoring and building those structures, creating those spaces that improve communication and all facets of safety? In-office and hybrid workers are just as important to this as those who work in the trades. In fact, research shows that in-person dynamics affecting psychological safety at work may carry over into the remote work environment. So even if someone is a hybrid employee and works 1 day a week in the office, that time spent in office can impact their time working outside of the office when they're working remotely, depending on how their safety culture and how their communication status is when they are in office. What does the data tell us? The data tells us that teams with high trust report more hazards. Clearly, more reporting results in fewer serious injuries, and engaged teams outperform, right? We have all been, hopefully, on an engaged team that outperforms. Unfortunately, we probably all have been in under-engaged teams, right, who are struggling to reach the goals and the KPIs that we have either set for ourselves or have been set for us. More reporting of potential accidents or more communications around near misses does not necessarily mean more problems. It provides better visibility and better opportunities for prevention. And while the data are clear about this connection, unfortunately, what we do see is that psychological safety and a holistic safety culture has remained a lower priority for organizations when compared to other emerging safety factors and initiatives. Shared ownership at work is one of my favorite topics, and I think in particular because it crosses over every single aspect of every single job that we potentially could have. And honestly, a lot of it goes into all of our relationships that we have, not just at work. When we're talking about this particular topic and shared ownership at work and the connection towards driving improved physical safety, it seems silly, but right, safety is not just the safety manager's job. Everyone is responsible. Shared ownership of decisions and communications and policies and activities will spread awareness and accountability. For example, better joint working relationships, processes, and procedures between human resources and health and safety teams is becoming recognized as a key tenet to address workplace safety in a more holistic and complete manner. A research study recently from McKinsey suggests that an overwhelming majority, 89% of those questioned, believe that psychological safety in the workplace encourages greater innovation and a stronger community, and indicates that when it is present, it helps workers to feel safe in their place of work. So again, if we can drive forward opportunities for shared ownership at work, we're driving psychological safety, driving innovation, and driving community and connectedness. We can talk a whole other time about how that drives forward the opportunity for improved revenue. Some of the benefits of shared ownership: accountability, engagement, faster fixes, belonging. These cultural strengths clearly translate directly into safer operations. In 2018, for example, Dr. Brian Brim in Gallup noted that when people are part of the solution and they know that they are a valuable part of the work and the decisions being made, that is to say, when they do have that sense of shared ownership, they are much more likely to be engaged in the situation, in the project, and in the safety of themselves and their teammates. Some common barriers. I actually have a whole other slide deck with some really funny sort of cartoons to go with this slide and this topic. But some common barriers that come up in the idea of building shared ownership to then drive psychological safety, right? Siloed goals, misaligned priorities, lack of trust, and communication gaps. Siloed goals are unfortunately incredibly common, even in teams that are highly collaborative. So if you have a team, they may have KPIs around utilization. They may have KPIs around revenue generation. They may have KPIs around marketing outcomes. If those KPIs are not, if those goals are not set together and shared and openly discussed in a team, you have siloed goals, even with the best of intentions. Misaligned priorities can be the same thing, where even if we have common goals, the method being used to achieve those goals and the priority in achieving them can be misaligned and be a significant barrier. Lack of trust. This is an interesting one. Trust can be a really weighty word for folks. And I would just encourage you to think about, trusting people to do as you have asked, doing the work that other people have asked of you, and really trusting people's motivation in your team, right? And if you don't have that sense of buy-in, ownership, safety, the trust can be challenging. And then the last one is communication gaps. So we'll talk a little bit more about some of the norms and things of that nature. Research in 2025 showed that the top contributing factors to a lack of psychological safety are, number one, at 48%, high workload or time pressures. Number two, at 42%, stressors in other areas of life, such as financial. So again, this is something that we have to be aware of. And I think certainly as women in the workplace, we are very aware of the difficulty sometimes in drawing boundaries between personal and professional. And so it's very normal to expect that we would have overflow from one spot to the next. And then this other, the next one is lack of supporting leadership. So again, when we think about leadership, that could be a direct report. It could be the CEO. It could be any point in between. It could be a project manager. So having these particular areas, workload and time pressure, stressors in other areas of life, and supporting lack of supportive leadership, these are really spaces where we owe it to ourselves and again to the team to make this change. We do have the ability to directly impact a large group of these and how folks are removing these barriers that so often come up. So I know we're on a webinar format and it's a little bit different with the chat and the Q&A. So we won't do a traditional audience participation with this. But I would ask you to think about this and either write it down for yourself. You could certainly pop it in the Q&A if you'd like. But where do you see people hesitant to speak up? Where are you at work and in work situations? Where are you hesitant to speak up? Knowing where that is occurring, what setting, what grouping, what dynamic, who's in the room, is it a specific topic? Understanding where that is happening and what is driving that will help identify the options that we have open to us that improve engagement, communication, and ultimately ownership. So I encourage you to think about that, and we can hop in.
Jessica, I just wanted to hop in here. First of all, I want to remind everyone that feel free to enter any questions or comments into the chat. But one thing that I have noticed throughout my career that I think there can be big hesitation when there's fear of either retaliation or like peer pressure or whatnot. So I don't know if you're going to get to that or you want to answer that now. But how do you manage that when people have a fear of speaking up? Like, so basically I'm asking the same question, but I do think that in many cases, there's just sort of this fear for different reasons of, again, whether it's sort of retaliation or I don't know. I'm probably not wording this correctly, but
no, you're 100% correct. I mean, and it's this, this crosses, and thank you for saying that. This does cross over every demographic, right? So there are folks, regardless of who they are, what their role is, how old or experienced they are. This idea of speaking up and retaliation, or the consequence that comes with that,
Right.
is certainly something that we have to be really cautious of. One of the things I'll talk about in a minute is, creating some different spaces to provide the opportunity to speak up. Because in some cases, it is not only difficult, but probably not productive to speak up in a certain situation or in a certain meeting or in a certain venue. And so evaluating and being able to prioritize, is this my moment? Is this the space? Will I, as someone who needs to speak up, have a different opportunity? And so again, when we're talking about wanting to create a space where people feel psychologically safe so that they can bring these things forward, so that we can ultimately problem solve and keep everybody safe every day, and going home with all of their fingers and toes and everything else that they have. It's really important that one meeting or that one venue or that one weekly Teams call isn't the only space for them to speak up, because being able to have different opportunities and different avenues, hopefully, right, will encourage different people to communicate differently. And I think one of the things that, sidebar, but related with regards to communication, is communication styles and how different people are comfortable communicating, and understanding that people on your team, the people that you work with, I often say the people that you live with, we all have different communication styles. And so we can't just say, if you have an issue, bring it to the meeting on Monday. I mean, I do say that, please bring your issues to our meeting on Monday, but I know that there are folks who would never do that. They'd rather, get a root canal than do that. So I have to provide other options for that. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Certainly not every situation is under our control as far as repairing some of the spaces where the fear of retaliation potentially could be more real than others. So thank you so much, Lori, for bringing that forward. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jessica. And I just want to note, it's just come to my attention that the chat is disabled. So again, for all, if you do have a question or a comment, please use the Q&A. And my apologies for that.
Yep.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. So let's talk a little bit, and I'll dig into this. And this is some of, actually leads perfectly from, it's like you had my slides, Lori, but this sort of leads into some of those more tactical spaces. So some pillars of a really important safety culture that allow us to be physically and psychologically safe. A clear purpose, having those aligned goals, right? That's the opposite of the siloed goals we talked about earlier. Communication norms. This is a powerful yet tricky one. Empowerment and trust, and then a culture of feedback. So with clear purpose, we really want to connect safety to the purpose of the work, and just be really clear and upfront about it. Everything we do every day, whether you work in an office or you work in the field or you work both or you work from home, we need to be safe. We need to be safe in what we're doing. Please do not stand on the rolly chair to, get that file down from the bookshelf. Please wear all of your PPE that you're supposed to have on before you go in the field. Having a clear purpose in this space towards safety culture really will align behavior better than rules. I mean, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Showing people what that looks like and having that clear purpose that you have not just talked about, but actually modeled, can be really important. And in that, thinking about the ways that you can link the tasks to the outcomes. What is the actual purpose that we are doing right now? What is the ultimate goal? And what is the goal of this little tiny piece that you've asked me to do? And how do you get me to buy in? With aligned goals, again, in ways that this is possible, to have shared scorecards or some KPIs that you share across a team or with a couple of coworkers, can be really powerful. Sometimes I actually had someone say to me that, that they feel like that their scorecard is different than someone else's, and that they're not being evaluated properly. I had not shared the rubric that we were using. It is the same rubric, but I had not taken that step, and I realized that was a misstep in communication. If I had been clearer and more visible about the KPIs across a group, would have really brought probably some things forward in a more productive way. So, right, aligning your goals across your team. Explaining the shared metrics can be really important, because if we're not sharing those goals, you're going to lose priority, right? And then that's when safety first, right? And if safety is not a shared priority, it's going to fall below where it needs to be. Communication norms is another really interesting one. And there's so much, we could spend a whole nother slide deck talking about generations and communication and modes of communication. There are so many communication norms that we assume that are unstated, and that makes them not the norm. So I would encourage you to think about, how were your norms agreed to? Did we have an agreement about what those norms are, what the proper modes of communication are? If you have a really cross-generational team, which now we often do have, all the way from, luckily I don't have any Gen Alpha yet, but we do have Gen Z, all the way up through boomers in the workplace. How are we managing those communication gaps? I give you a perfect example. If you say to someone that this is due at close of business, COB or EOB, or end of the week or end of the day, right? What does that mean? What does that mean to you? What does that mean to them? If we haven't said that close of business is 5 o'clock or that end of day is midnight, we can't assume, because when we've now assumed that everybody knows what that means. No, everybody does not know what that means. So again, be really clear. Clarity builds confidence. Another thing with regards to Lori's question in sort of bridging this communication gap, as I really encourage regular check-ins. That does not mean you have to meet with a ton of people, every week, but do think about creating an open loop or an open door, or something that can be really, honestly, pretty quick and impactful. Empowerment and trust is a kind of a loaded one, but what I would invite you to do is to encourage the conversation and honestly encourage dissent. Let's not fight about things, but let's have a really good, open and honest conversation. Model that, right? Some people it can be uncomfortable, but if we can model it, we can create a more comfortable space, where hopefully everyone will start to grow their muscles in that space, and really acknowledge that trust is going to accelerate learning and honestly prevention of accidents and improvement of psychological safety at work. And then the last one is feedback culture. Again, this can be a challenging one. Feedback can be hard to receive and hard to give. I would encourage you to practice really quickly with very small, easy things, and ask for feedback as well. So be willing to take the feedback, be willing to give it, and keep it as objective as possible, but create those, just make it part of the loop, right? When we have a training class, at the end of the day, we have a conversation. It's very informal, but it's a very quick check-in. It does pave the way for some of those harder conversations as we go forward. I just want to remind you, not only with safety of all kinds, but also in life, silence is not golden. So if a concern is not voiced, a small issue will escalate. Talked a little bit about some practical tactics. I would encourage you to, as a leader or someone who can, influence leadership, get a commitment towards this, regardless of what that might look like. A vital factor underpinning psychological safety is self-awareness by leaders of how we show up and what the impact of our behaviors and our actions, or also inactions, can be on everyone on the team. And it is those foundational factors that are good leader coaching behaviors that can really drive positive impact with psychological and physical safety at work. My favorite pieces of this in ways to model these behaviors: be consistent, be accessible, be visible, and be authentic. Again, we could have a whole other conversation about those words, but show empathy and show respect. They will have immense dividends as we drive forward the ideas of psychological, physical, and mental health safety. Some daily micro habits. Pausing for questions. No one likes an awkward silence, but it can be super powerful even for 10 or 15 seconds. It might feel like 10 minutes, but pause, right? Give people who don't normally speak up a space to step in. Do a quick check for understanding. Again, this can be around communication norms. Modeling the behavior of, I might be wrong. Adam Grant reminds us that the 4 most important words a leader can say are, I need your help, right? Modeling these behaviors is really, really important, and using some of those magical words. And again, invite those quieter voices. Find ways to encourage people who are valuable members of your team, but are very, very quiet, to find and use their voice. Again, some quick things you could say. I'm noticing, keep it on yourself, not you, but me. I'm noticing that you seem a little upset today. I'm noticing you were pretty upset after that meeting. I'm noticing that I didn't get a chance to hear the rest of your conversation or your comment during the meeting about the proposed plan. How can I assist with that? Can we pause and check, right? Offer the opportunity. They might say no. If you offer enough, they probably will say yes. And a 2-word check-in. So I would encourage you, I know I'm getting short on time. I love Brene Brown. I would encourage you to look at her 2-word check-in. Super fast, super powerful. 3 things to do to build your action plan after today. Start, stop, continue. Everyone is familiar with that, but get feedback from your team and get feedback from yourself. What's something I can start? What's something I can stop? What's something I can continue? Pick 1 or 2 priorities that are really impactful, but also feel a little bit like low-hanging fruit for you to begin with. Again, this can be really complicated as we start to drive psychological safety forward, then towards physical safety. Meshing those 2 things together, where are some spaces that you can drive prioritization in your team and in the work that you do? And then also ownership, right? So assign ownership, but take ownership and be honest about who those belong to and where they lie. Key takeaways, I hope you have. Trust drives safety. Voice prevents incidents. Ownership beats compliance every day. And really small habits can create really big change. I thank you so much for letting me be here. I think, unfortunately, I used every second of my 30 minutes. But I would love to continue the conversation. I do have a separate set of resources and references, podcasts, books, articles that I'm happy to share out if anyone wants to reach out to me. I'm super active on LinkedIn. You can find me there, and my contact information is on the slide. So thank you so much to everyone. And it was truly my pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Jessica. I think you offered a lot, and you mentioned at one point throughout your presentation, safety first, and it's something that always comes to mind, even from my father. So, I think it just impacts all of our decisions, whether it's work-related, home-related, kids-related, whatever, safety first. So thank you so much. Such an impactful session and topic. And with that, we are going to move on to our final session of the day. I'm excited to introduce Enabling Innovation Through Conflict Transformation. Assumpta Serta, who is the Director of Network and Service Planning at ARTM, will be running this session. So with that, I kick it off to Assumpta. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lori. Thank you to all the other speakers before. That was such a great presentation, Jessica. So interesting. I'm sharing my own screen, so let me know if it's not working, if you can see it. I guess it's working then. Okay, so I'm Assumpta Serta. I'm from Montreal. I'm apparently the only Canadian in this conference, so I'm really happy to represent Canada here. I have a master's in urban planning. I have a graduate degree in conflict prevention and resolution, and I've been working for the last 17 years in transit. I've been managing a variety of complex transit projects. I've worked on a lot of innovative and transformational projects, such as new technology and pilot projects. I've also worked in governance changes and great big transformational reorganizations. And I also have a conflict resolution practice where I focus on conflict quotient, mediation, and conflict analysis. And what I wanted to do today, this is a bit of an experiment for me. I wanted to share some of the concepts, some of the learnings I have from the field of conflict resolution that have helped me in all of these different projects that I've worked on. And so I'm really just trying to share some knowledge. Hopefully you'll find it interesting. And at the end of this presentation, maybe you'll want to research more about it, think more about it. My goal is not to actually teach conflict resolution, but just give you a glimpse of different ideas. So I'm going to start just with the definition. What is conflict? Conflict at its core is a disagreement between people, between groups. We feel, though, that it's not just a regular disagreement, that there's something a little bit more intense when we're talking about conflict. And that's because at its core, when we're talking about conflict, it's because it's about something that we care about. So it's a disagreement between people, between groups that may have opposing goals, values, or needs. So really something important that is at stake. It can be about identity also. It could be with high emotions. And that is also the way we're going to find our way through the conflict, is understanding that beneath the surface, there's something that really matters that we want to be discussing, we want to be exposing, and we want to be sharing. Of course, no one likes conflict. It's not a pleasant thing to have to go through. It makes us feel all sorts of emotions. We have different tolerances to conflict. Some people can be very conflict avoidant. Other people can be more aggressive. And it can also depend. We might be one way at home, another way at work. In that sense, when we're dealing with conflict and with people, we'll know that there's a lot of different types of reactions that people might be having to a situation. Conflict is something that we need to really take seriously, especially in the workplace. Incivility and conflict are important risk factors for harassment, for low engagement, for low productivity. And it's important when we're a leader that we set the norm about how we treat conflict in our team, in our work environment. In that sense, we have to be aware of what our natural tolerance to conflict is, our natural conflict style, and actually make sure that we're acting in a way that is in accordance with proper norms, the way our company wants us to handle this, and really treating it seriously. However, as I was saying before, conflict is not per se something that is always negative. It is about a disagreement. It is about something that matters. And we have to find a way to be able to have those conversations about important topics. There is such a thing as constructive tension. It can be super useful when we need to really get to the heart of something, to find something really a creative solution, when we need to really be challenging ideas and preconceived notions. And having that constructive tension is about finding a way to have these disagreements in a manner that is trustful, respectful, and that there is a frame around it. So the two ideas I'm going to bring today are two concepts. One of them is about managing ourselves, and the other one is about how we manage other people. The first one, managing yourself, is about our own conflict narratives, the stories that we have. Why this is important is because when we are in an innovative project, we're managing a new innovation, we're managing a transformational project, something that is really causing a big change, we are going to be in something that is inherently stressful. Sonia Dupien, who wrote the book For the Love of Stress, she says she found as a researcher that any situation that has one of these four ingredients will cause us to release stress hormones. And these four ingredients are novelty, so anything new, unpredictability, when the things are uncertain, a threat to the ego, maybe my competence is being called into question, maybe my role is being threatened, and a low or no sense of control. Most innovation projects and transformational projects will have all of these ingredients, and we can all be living in them, feeling them in different ways. And because there is a lot of stress, this matters because being in a high stress environment will cause us to feel threatened. Our response to stress is feeling threatened. And when we feel threatened, we can have cognitive distortions. That means we can have things like all or nothing thinking, black or white thinking, or generalization, catastrophizing. And this type of thinking will lead to rigid interpretations of the world, will lead to fueling our conflict stories, will lead to escalating conflict. And that can lead to really problematic workplace situations. If we don't address the conflict, we can end up with factionalism. That is when two groups are sort of at war with each other. We can have persistent tensions. We can have some very unproductive ways of working that set in as a result of these responses, and that leads to toxic work environments. So it's really important that we become aware of our response in these stressful situations, that we become aware of what's happening, what are the stories we're telling ourselves. And we can know that everyone has these stories. Everyone's telling themselves a story about the conflict. But what matters is that first we start looking at ourselves before we start trying to intervene into other people's ideas or situations. So the first concept I want to bring is exploring conflict stories. When there is a conflict, we're involved in a conflict, or we're seeing other people be part of a conflict, or there's a larger group conflict, there's always a story that we're telling ourselves. And the story tends to oversimplify the situation. It'll always be usually one person who is doing something wrong, who is to blame. The other person is doing their best, this is a mistake. And we really tend to always be the victim and the other person being the villain. And this is completely normal. Everyone's brain works that way. So we can imagine that we're all somebody else's villain. And when we're in a highly stressful situation, then we'll have all these cognitive distortions that'll make all of this worse. That'll make our stories even more rigid. One reason why it's important that we take a step back from this is that we lose our power when we're in a situation, in a conflict story, where everything is somebody else's fault. If the situation is so difficult that the only thing that can make it better is if the other person changes, there's just not much we can do. We just have to wait for the other person to change, and that might never happen. So being able to take a step back, exploring our conflict stories, will also give us the power we need to make a shift and hopefully make a difference in the situation. Where do our conflict stories come from? We construct them ourselves. One of the ingredients for our stories is our observations. So we notice the things that are happening. However, we do have a filter, and we pay attention to certain things. We filter out other things. So it's important when we're reviewing our narrative, reviewing our story, that we list our observations. We describe to ourselves, maybe on a piece of paper or to a friend or to a coach, what it is about the situation that we're seeing. What is the story that the events that happened? But we also try to do the reverse and see what are all the things that we haven't observed, the things that we didn't see happen, the things that might have happened that we're not aware of, anything that helps us complexify a little bit the story and bring some nuance to it. The second ingredient to our stories is our interpretations. So we assign meaning to these events. We have our own filters that we're always wearing when we look at a situation. It could be something that's happened to us in the past. We had an issue with a colleague before that turned out this way, and now we're seeing this new situation through that same filter. It could be our own cultural references. When someone looks at me this way or speaks to me this way, it's a lack of respect. I expect to be treated differently. And so that's a really important interpretation, an important belief to be aware of. We make assumptions. We fill in the things that we don't have any information about. We didn't actually observe something, but we assume that this is what is happening. For example, someone is always interrupting me, I assume that it's because they don't respect me. I will assume that it's for whatever reason, but we're not in their head. And the last important piece to understand is our interest. When we create these stories, we create them because there's something we care about. And the story is there to help us put that forth. So we care about, we have needs, goals, values, something we want to protect. And understanding that is also the key that will help us figure out what's the right way to act, setting out these different informations. Just quickly, some helpful behavior, even if we don't know everything about our own stories and our other people's stories. Some helpful behavior in any situation where there's a conflict. So try not to judge, stating observations, trying not to attribute intentions and assumptions, or at least noticing them when we can, and trying to take a step back from that and sticking to the facts is always really helpful. Exploring narratives, that means trying to clarify your attitudes, your needs, your beliefs, but it's also really helpful to try to imagine alternate narratives. So for example, once my story is clear for me, I see it this way, can I imagine the same story from somebody else's point of view? Let's say I'm a neutral person looking at the situation from the outside. How would they describe what happened? How would they describe their reactions? What if maybe I'm the other person? How do I think that this other person is seeing the situation? And not necessarily what do I assume that they're thinking, but if I were to describe it from their point of view, what would I discover? And the last helpful behavior is to explore contributions. Instead of trying to determine what really happened, the truth of the situation, or to see who is right and who is wrong, can we try to see it more in terms of what did we each contribute to this situation? What are the different ingredients we brought to this cake? Focusing on your own contribution is also the way that you'll find a way out of it, as I was saying before. So if I focus and I see that this in this situation, I've been believing that this person is not very good at their work. I don't really trust the quality of what they're delivering. And so I'm being very picky about what I'm receiving. And that's being received as micromanaging. And then the person changes their behavior because of this. And we get into a bit of a conflict loop. Well, there's something I can do here. There's something I can see that I'm contributing through this action, through this expectation that I have, and what is a different way I could act and see how that would change. So understanding your own contribution, even if it's a very small one, is the way actually that we can make a difference. So the second idea I want to bring is about managing other people, especially specifically managing teams, because there is a way that we can use disagreements in a team setting to actually help the team become more motivated, more autonomous, and get to these creative tensions, these really engaging conversations that we want them to have when it's time to work on something that's really transformational or innovative. So on the screen, we have the 5 stages of team development. A team will go through these stages on its way to becoming a high-performing, peak efficiency, motivated, and autonomous team. And we all want our teams to be at that stage. The way the model works is that at the beginning, when a team comes together for the first time, they're in a stage called forming. They're becoming a team, and they're not a team yet. They don't have a common goal because that's the main ingredient of people working together as a team. They don't really know each other. They don't necessarily have clear roles. They can be very polite and superficial. And this will be a moment where it might be a little bit difficult to get them to brainstorm or to be challenging ideas that are different because there's no actual ways of working and norms around this type of conversation. The team will then go into the second phase. It's aptly named storming, and this is what it is. And if you've been in any team, you can recognize it because there is a moment when a team is creating itself, that's organizing itself, that we get into lots of disagreements, lots of discussions about how we're going to work together, what are the roles and responsibilities. We're going to have a lot of resistance. We can be having people criticize ideas because everyone is sort of trying to figure out what their place is. Am I the leader? Are you the leader? Are you going to be imposing this? Is this really the way that we want to work? All teams go through this phase, and teams will either move forward to the next phase or stay there or move back. And what we want them to do is to move forwards. And so in order to move forward, we need to go through the next phase, which is called norming, which is where we decide how we're going to be working together. We resolve our conflicts, we decide who is responsible for what. This is what our working style is going to be. And when this is functioning properly, then we'll go to the next phase of performing until the project finishes, and then we'll close the project team. So we're already seeing that managing conflicts and disagreements is just a natural part of team formation. It's not even just natural, it's essential, and it can be actually really positive if we manage it properly. To manage it properly, we need to help the team get unstuck, and we need to help them resolve their own conflicts. So there, as a leader, as a project manager, it's really important to understand that our role here in helping the team move forward is to bring a framework and to facilitate the discussion, but it's not to do it for them. So it's really to help guide, organize, and do it in a direct manner at the beginning, more directive at the beginning, but not necessarily do it for them. So the team has to resolve its own conflicts. And one of the most important things the leader can do here is to set clear goals and create a clear common purpose, because the team will be deciding on these different rules and functioning and norms based on what they need to accomplish together. And that makes a really big difference in being able to create this team feeling. The leader has to establish trust. We heard a really great presentation before about all the different ways that we can do that. It's really important that we set norms for the team at the beginning of how we want them to interact, what we accept and the type of behavior we want to promote. And the leader's role is going to be to facilitate these discussions at the beginning, to help the team organize itself. The leader can intervene by centering the discussion, by inviting certain people to participate, refraining participation if necessarily, so that everyone gets a chance. The leader should be managing things like time, goals, procedures, structuring tasks, defining the end state. But the leader should not necessarily be there giving the content. Your role is more to be asking the questions, facilitating, organizing, and less about doing the actual work. And as the team will evolve in these different stages, it's important for the leader to step back and go from this directing, organizing role more into a delegating role, because the goal is really for the team to be able to take on these tasks by themselves and figure out their own problems. When they have conflicts, now they have a way of working through them, a way of pushing each other to go further. Some helpful behavior here. First, clarifying is always, in any case, useful. So acting as someone who is there to ask the questions, to make sure everyone understands, not being the one with the answers, but being the one that is translating between people. So helping by defining terms and ideas, asking questions, summarizing the discussion at the end of an important point, at the end of an important meeting, recapping on what has been said so that everyone understands and hears the same thing and aligns around this. Listening. So listening is not as easy as we think it is. It is a very difficult skill to put into practice regularly. There's always a lot going on in our mind and a lot of things we feel like we want to say. As a leader, making sure that you can give space to people to verbalize their ideas, to share their emotions, to feel their emotions, and give them the time they need to organize their thoughts if need be. Reflecting what is being said is a super useful tool, and it's useful to make sure that we're actually listening. So when someone says something, if we can repeat it back to them, I think I understood that you said this. Is this really what you meant? It's good because it gives people the chance to clarify their ideas and to make sure that they're being understood. And it also gives you a tool to make sure you're really listening, because it's easier when we're focusing, trying to repeat on what people are saying. And the last helpful behavior is really to be calm. These are always stressful moments, stressful projects. Being aware of your own stress response is important, and of other people's, being able to take a break if necessary, to take a step back. When we're caught up in an emotion, caught up in a story, being able to step back from that and examine what's happening before we intervene, before we react, is always very helpful. So that brings me to the end of my presentation. I wanted to share two ideas, two concepts with you about conflict, especially in highly stressful projects and projects. One is how you can manage yourself by examining your conflict narratives, your beliefs and interpretations, taking a step back and complexifying your story. And two is how you can manage others by being a leader that enables team autonomy through a clear framework and facilitated discussions, and that will help your team develop the norms, develop the ways of working where they can really have these discussions and more constructive tension and disagreements. That's it. If there's any questions, I'm ready.
Hi, Assumpta. Thank you for that. I see no questions in the Q&A, so if anyone has one, please feel free to add that now. I do have a question. I feel like many leaders or even just people in general instinctively look at conflict as being negative, but it can oftentimes really drive innovation and be, ultra constructive discussion to get to a better place. Like, how can we as leaders sort of differentiate that or channel it, I guess, so that it does stay productive? And how do we remind ourselves not to just immediately squash this conflict? Because I know sometimes even myself, that might be my first instinct to do. So anyway.
That's a really good question. It makes us all uncomfortable. Nobody likes conflict. It brings up all these emotions that we don't want to deal with, for sure. And sometimes it's hard to see what the conflict is really about, because it's often what we're seeing is a symptom, usually, of something that's deeper. So you're right that it is useful when we can get down to understand what's important here. What is it that this situation is really about? But it does take a lot of even personal investment to be able to get there. So as a leader, and especially if there's a conflict on your team or on a project that you're steering, being able to take a step back and kind of analyzing it and saying, what is it that is happening here? Who is really involved? Often a conflict will appear as if it's between just two people. If we just take a step back enough, we'll see that there's a lot more people involved. What are the relationships between these people? What are the values? What are the needs that they're expressing? And even just opening that door will make it easier, because it'll give us different options of how we could address the situation, instead of feeling that we have to kind of parent our employees. We just have to sort of more guide them to something.
Yep. I like that answer. And I agree with you. It does oftentimes feel like it gets personal, but it's probably not. Everything's much bigger. I do see one question in the chat. It looks like it's just a comment that this is very helpful, and thank you so much. Again, not everybody has access to speak. Only the panelists have access to actually speak. But if you have any questions, please do so in the chat, and we can certainly hang on for a bit. If there's any other questions, I think we're good. Yeah, we might give people back 5 minutes more of their time.
Always
so,
appreciated.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much, Assumpta. This is definitely a topic that I think can be challenging for so many of us, and it's unavoidable. We're going to experience it in our work lives, no matter what we do, every single day. So thank you for these tips and thoughtful tools to help us become better at, again, channeling some of this to make it more productive. So with that, I want to thank all of our panelists for their time today, their insights in leadership, and also thank you to all of you attendees for joining us today. We truly appreciate your participation and hope you can join us next week with Resilient Connections, Bridges, Climate, and Shared Streets. As we close, we hope you've experienced the connection, leadership, and spirit that really define WTS. If you're not yet fully engaged, we'd love to continue this journey with you. Please reach out to anyone in leadership for more information to either get further involved in active or to join as a member. And with that, happy Friday and enjoy your day. I hope to see you next week. Thank you, everyone.